What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses walks onto a daytime talk show and everything goes completely sideways? When careful media training meets raw, unfiltered opinion? When a simple promo interview turns into a viral flashpoint? When composure meets confrontation? We're talking about the explosive clash between Anne Hathaway and Joy Behar. A moment that left producers scrambling, co-hosts frozen, and millions of viewers wondering if they had just witnessed the talk show version of a train wreck. Before we unpack exactly what happened, hit subscribe and tell us in the comments what you think really went down. Because this story has layers. It started like any other morning on The View. Anne Hathaway was there to promote her new drama, a tense, awards season favorite about corporate whistleblowers. She stepped on stage in a sharp navy blazer, beaming at the crowd, receiving the kind of applause that only Anne Hathaway gets. Whoopi Goldberg opened the segment with a softball, asking about the film's message and the courage it takes to tell uncomfortable truths. Anne answered gracefully, measured, eloquent, and passionate. For the first few minutes, it was textbook daytime television. Charming guest, thoughtful conversation, a happy audience. Then Joy Behar leaned forward, and everything changed. She brought up an interview Anne had done weeks earlier, a quote about the responsibility of wealthy people to confront inequality. Joy's tone was casual, but the edge was unmistakable. "So," she asked, "you think people like us, sitting here making a good living in entertainment, we're part of the problem?" The air shifted. Anne's smile faltered just slightly. She took a slow breath. "I think we have to be honest about the platforms we have," she said. "That's not controversial. That's just reality." But Joy wasn't letting it go. "You also said," she continued, "that people in our tax bracket should be paying far more than we do. You realize that's easy to say once you've made your millions, right? Some of us worked our way up from nothing." The other co-hosts exchanged uneasy glances. Anne straightened in her chair. "I worked my way up too, Joy," she replied evenly. Recognizing a broken system doesn't mean attacking individuals. It means being honest about inequality and wanting change. The audience had gone silent. Joy crossed her arms. "Here's what I find interesting," she said, her voice sharpening. "Celebrities love to talk about justice and fairness, but you fly private jets to climate conferences, you live in gated communities, while preaching about community." Anne's jaw tightened. "That's a false equivalence," she said, her tone cooling. "You're confusing personal lifestyle choices with policy positions. I can advocate for higher taxes on the wealthy, including myself, while living in the world that currently exists. That's not hypocrisy. That's pragmatism," Joy smirked. "Sounds like virtue signaling to me." The words landed like a match in a dry room. Anne's eyes hardened. "Virtue signaling," she repeated. "That's what people say when they want to dismiss conviction without engaging with it. I've donated millions. I've fought for policy change. What exactly would you like me to do, Joy? Apologize for caring?" Whoopi tried to step in. "Let's take a breath. Maybe go back to the film." But Joy wasn't finished. "What I'd like," Joy said, "is for you to admit that it's easy to be generous with other people's money. You want higher taxes, fine. But you're also asking working-class viewers to pay for your idealism. Maybe they have different priorities." Anne didn't flinch. Her voice stayed calm, but her eyes burned. "Working-class people," she said, "would benefit most from the policies I support. Universal health care, affordable child care, paid family leave. Those aren't radical ideas. They already exist in every other developed country, and they'd be paid for by taxing people like us, not them." There was a ripple through the audience. Some applause, some murmurs. Joy's face flushed. "So now you're an economics expert," she shot back. "Got a degree we don't know about?" Anne leaned forward, unwavering. "I don't need a degree to read data from economists. The question is, Do you disagree with the numbers, or do you just dislike what they say? By that point, Whoopi's hand was already on the table, ready to cut to commercial. But the tension had already done its work. The segment that started as a film promo had just turned into the viral moment of the week. A cultural Rorschach test between conviction and cynicism, idealism and resentment, belief and backlash. Joy's voice cut through the air, sharp and unwavering. "I disagree with being lectured by someone who lives in a bubble," she said. "You know what's insulting? Being told I don't care about people because I question whether massive government programs solve everything." Anne leaned forward, the calm veneer slipping just slightly. "I never said you don't care about people," she replied, her tone tightening. "I said the system is broken. If you're taking that as a personal attack, maybe you should ask yourself why." The words landed like a slap. Joy froze, her mouth opening, then closing again. Sarah Haynes jumped in, desperate to diffuse. "Anne, tell us about working with your director." The emotional scenes looked incredibly challenging. But Anne was still looking at Joy, and Joy was still looking right back. The silence stretched. The tension became almost unbearable. Then Anne turned, finally, toward Sarah and began answering, her voice controlled but thin, her smile too bright, too brittle. Joy stayed silent, arms crossed, eyes fixed somewhere past the cameras. Sonny Hostin tried to restore balance, asking about moral courage in the film. Anne responded thoughtfully, but the warmth was gone. The studio air had changed. What had begun as a polite morning interview was now something else. Unfiltered, unscripted, a live moment of rupture. The conversation limped along for another minute, the other co-hosts scrambling to steady it. Alyssa Farah Griffin asked about the research Anne had done for her role, and Anne spoke about meeting real whistleblowers, ordinary people who risked everything for truth. But the room could feel it. The silence between Anne and Joy had weight. It wasn't over. And then Whoopi Goldberg, ever the moderator, ever the realist, made the decision to face it head on. She turned toward the two women and said, carefully, "Look, clearly you both have strong opinions, and that's what this show is about. Different perspectives. Can we find some common ground here?" Anne nodded slowly. "I think we both care about people," she said. "We just disagree about how to help them." "I can respect that." Joy tilted her head. "Can you, though?" she asked, eyes narrowing slightly. "Because a minute ago, you implied I'm defensive because I'm secretly afraid you're right," Anne blinked. "I didn't say that," Joy shot back instantly. "You absolutely did. You said if I take it personally, I should ask myself why. That's not respectful disagreement. That's pop psychology. That's you telling me my opinion comes from guilt or insecurity instead of conviction." Anne exhaled, visibly reining herself in. "Okay," she said. "You're right. That was condescending, and I apologize. I shouldn't have phrased it that way. But Joy..." Her voice firmed again. "You've questioned my sincerity from the start. You called my beliefs virtue signaling. How is that not dismissive?" Joy leaned forward. "Because I've been in this business for decades," she said, her tone hardening. "I've watched countless celebrities adopt causes because it's fashionable. I've seen actors cry about climate change and then take helicopters to avoid traffic. I've seen millionaires preach compassion while blocking affordable housing in their neighborhoods. So forgive me for being skeptical when another Hollywood star tells me she knows what's best for America." Anne's face had gone pale, but her voice held steady. "I'm not every other celebrity, Joy. I'm sitting here, having this conversation, not dodging it. I'm engaging with you directly. That's not PR, that's me." The studio was dead silent. Even the hum of the cameras seemed louder than breathing. Sonny leaned forward gently. "I actually think what's happening here is valuable," she said. "We're watching a real conversation about class, privilege, and responsibility. Unfiltered." But Joy wasn't done. "You want real?" she said, turning toward Anne. "Fine. Let's talk about your movie. It's about a whistleblower who exposes corporate corruption, right? Anne nodded cautiously. I'm sure it's inspiring, Joy continued. But let's not kid ourselves. It's a product. It's designed to make money for a studio, for producers, for you. So, when you sit here talking about responsibility and inequality, aren't you also selling something? That did it. Anne's composure finally cracked. Her voice rose. Just slightly, but enough to make the audience gasp. Of course I'm promoting a movie, Joy, she said, her eyes blazing. That's literally why I'm here. But that doesn't invalidate everything I believe, Anne said, her voice regaining its steadiness. You're a host on a talk show that makes money from advertising. Does that mean you can't have genuine political opinions? Does that mean everything you say is just selling something? Joy's eyes narrowed. That's different, and you know it, she snapped. I'm a political commentator. It's my job to have opinions. You're an actress, someone who plays pretend for a living. Anne froze. Her voice went cold. Playing pretend, she repeated slowly. That's what you think I do? Joy gave a small shrug. It's what you literally do for a living, Anne. Alyssa's mouth fell open. Sunny's eyes darted to Whoopi, whose expression had gone from concerned to visibly alarmed. Anne straightened in her seat, half rising, the energy around her suddenly electric. I play characters, Joy. I tell stories. Stories that matter to people. Stories that make them think, feel, see the world differently. If you think that's less valuable than sitting here every day telling people what to think about the news, then I genuinely feel sorry for you. The words hit like thunder. Joy's face flushed deep red. She stood, her chair scraping against the floor. You feel sorry for me? She shouted. You feel sorry for me? I've been fighting for progressive causes since before you were born. I've used this platform to defend women's rights, LGBTQ rights, voting rights. What have you done besides play dress-up and collect awards? Anne stood too, her hands gripping the edge of the table. I've used every bit of influence I have to amplify voices that don't get heard. I've funded organizations. I've testified before Congress. And I've never once claimed my work is more important than anyone else's. But you, Joy, you talk like caring is a competition you've already won. Okay, that's enough, Whoopi said, standing now, her tone cutting through the chaos. We need to take a break. Both of you, sit down. Neither woman moved. They stood across from each other, unmoving, eyes locked, the air between them sharp as glass. Joy's voice dropped, lower now, steadier, almost calm, which somehow made it worse. You want to know what I really think, Anne? She said. I think you're naive. You've been rich and famous for so long that you've forgotten what struggle actually looks like. You talk about systemic change like it's a fairy tale. Like all we need to do is care more and it'll fix itself. But the real world doesn't work that way. Anne's eyes were blazing now. Don't you dare tell me I don't understand the struggle, she said, her voice trembling with controlled fury. You don't know anything about my life, what I've seen, what I've lived through. And even if I had been born into comfort, that wouldn't make me wrong. Ideas stand or fall on their merits, not on the biography of the person saying them. Joy let out a bitter laugh. Now you sound like a college freshman who just discovered philosophy. This isn't a debate club, Anne. The world doesn't care about your ideals when it can see you're not living by them. Anne's voice rose. What do you want from me, Joy? What would make you happy? Should I give away everything I own? Should I stop working? Should I apologize for being successful? Joy shot back instantly. I want you to stop pretending you're better than everyone else. Admit that your politics make you feel good, not accountable. They're convenient. They cost you nothing. Anne stepped back, her chest rising and falling. That's not true, she said, her voice breaking slightly. That is not true. I believe what I believe because I've looked at the evidence and followed my conscience. If that makes me naive in your eyes, fine. But don't call me fake. Don't tell me I don't mean it! The audience had erupted into whispers. Some were murmuring to each other. Others sat frozen. At the edge of the stage, producers were pacing frantically, talking into headsets. Whoopi's voice cut through the noise. "We're going to commercial now," she said sharply. But Joy ignored her. She pointed directly at Anne. "You want to prove you mean it?" she demanded. "Then stop talking and start doing. Stop giving interviews about how much you care. Actually change something. Otherwise, you're just another rich person with opinions." Anne's face went from pale to flushed. Her hands trembled as she tore the microphone from her lapel. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but filled with steel and fury. "You don't get to tell me what I have or haven't done, Joy," Anne said, her voice trembling but firm. "You don't know me. You've built a version of me in your head that fits your narrative, and now you're arguing with that version instead of the person sitting in front of you. You're not listening. You're just waiting for your turn to talk." Joy folded her arms, unimpressed. "Oh, I'm listening," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "I'm listening to a privileged person complain about being criticized. Do you know how that sounds to people watching at home who are working 2 jobs just to pay rent?" Anna's eyes glistened. Whether from anger or hurt, it was impossible to tell. "That's a cheap shot, and you know it," she said quietly. "You're using other people's struggles as a weapon instead of engaging with what I'm actually saying. You keep shifting the argument. First I'm virtue signaling, then I'm naive, then I'm not doing enough. Now I'm just complaining? What's the real issue here, Joy?" Joy's voice rose, sharp and heated. "The issue is people like you thinking you have all the answers. You sit here with your perfect hair, your designer clothes, and you lecture the rest of us about inequality. It's insulting." Anne's hand brushed a tear from her cheek, her composure cracking, but her voice gaining steel. "My clothes? That's what this is about now? You're wearing designer clothes too, Joy. Everyone at this table is. But when I talk about inequality, suddenly my outfit discredits me? That's absurd, and you know it." Joy stepped forward from behind the table, her tone lowering but growing colder. "What's absurd is that you can't see your own blind spots. You think caring is enough. You think good intentions are all it takes. Well, I've been around long enough to know that good intentions can do real damage, especially when they come from people who've never had to face the consequences." Whoopi moved between them, her voice firm and commanding. "Enough. Both of you. Sit down. This has gone too far." But neither moved. Joy turned to Whoopi, defiant. "We're already doing this on air, Whoopi. The cameras are rolling. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe people need to see that not everyone buys into celebrity activism." Anne's voice cut through the noise, trembling but resolute. "This isn't about celebrity activism, Joy. This is about you projecting your frustrations onto me. You've decided I'm the problem before I've even opened my mouth." Joy spun back toward her. "You want to know why? Because I'm tired, Anne. I'm tired of people with massive platforms wasting them on performative nonsense. I'm tired of real activists being ignored while celebrities get applause for reading a talking point. And I'm tired of being painted as the bad guy for calling it out." Anne's voice cracked, but didn't waver. "I never claimed to be an expert, Joy. I said I care. I said I've tried to educate myself. I said I'm using my platform the best way I know how. If that's not good enough for you, then nothing will be. But that's your issue, not mine." The studio erupted, half the audience clapping for Anne, the other half cheering Joy, with producers waving frantically at the edge of the stage. Sunny stood, her voice pleading. "Can we please just stop for a second? You're both saying things you might regret." Anne shook her head. "I don't regret a word. I've been honest. I've tried to have a real conversation, and I've been attacked for it." Joy scoffed. "Attacked? This is called disagreement, Anne. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't come on talk shows." Anne's composure finally broke. "I can handle disagreement. What I can't handle are bad faith arguments. I can't handle being treated like the enemy for daring to care. From the start, you've questioned my motives, my intelligence, my sincerity, and when I push back, you act like I'm being unreasonable. That's not disagreement, Joy. That's contempt." Joy's expression hardened. "You want to know why I've been hostile? Because I've earned my opinions through decades of work, of fighting, of surviving. And you, what have you earned them through? Reading a few articles between film, sets, talking points from your PR team? You're in your bubble, Anne, and you can't even see it." Anne reached under the table and grabbed her purse. Her voice was steady now, quiet, but final. "That's it," she said. "I'm done. I came here in good faith to talk about a film that matters to me, and you turned it into a personal attack. I'm not going to sit here and be insulted on national television." Whoopi reached out, her tone softening. "Anne, wait. Let's just take a breath, figure this out." But Anne was already walking toward the edge of the stage. "Running away?" Joy called after her, her voice mocking. "That's real brave, Anne. Very inspiring." Anne stopped, turned back, her face streaked with tears. Her voice, when it came, was low, but it cut through the room like glass. "I'm not running away, Joy. I'm not running away, Joy," Anne said, her voice low but steady. "I'm choosing not to engage with someone who has no interest in actual dialogue. There's a difference." Joy took a step forward, her tone biting. "You don't get to walk off this set and play the victim. You started this, Anne. You came in here with your sanctimonious talking points, and now you can't handle the heat." Anne's voice cracked slightly as she replied, "I answered a question you asked me. That's literally all I did. You brought up my interview, and I responded honestly. Everything that followed, that was you, Joy. You chose to escalate. You chose to make it personal. You chose to be cruel." Joy's eyes narrowed. "If you think this is cruelty, you're even more sheltered than I thought. This is honesty, Anne. Maybe you're just not used to people being honest with you." Anne looked toward the other co-hosts, her expression a mix of disbelief and quiet pleading. Sarah stared down at the table, Sunny's brow furrowed, torn between loyalty and discomfort. Alyssa looked like she wanted to intervene but couldn't find her voice. And Whoopi, her face said it all. Exhaustion, disappointment, and a quiet warning. Anne turned back to Joy. Her tone softened, but her words carried the weight of finality. "You know what the saddest part of all this is?" she said. "I actually admired you. I've watched this show for years. I've seen you fight for things I believe in. But now I realize your activism only extends to people who fit your narrow definition of acceptable. If someone doesn't have the right background or the right tone or the right resume, you shut them out. That's not progressivism, Joy. That's gatekeeping." Joy's response came like a blade of ice. "And you're so progressive you can't handle being challenged without falling apart." Anne wiped her face with the back of her hand, her voice trembling but defiant. "I'm not falling apart because I was challenged. I'm upset because I was ambushed. There's a difference between tough questions and open hostility. And you crossed that line 10 minutes ago." Joy folded her arms. "Then leave," she said flatly. "No one's stopping you." Anne looked at her for a long quiet moment. Then she nodded. "You're right," she said softly. "No one is." She unhooked her microphone, placed it on the table, and turned toward the edge of the stage. Her heels struck the floor in sharp, echoing clicks that filled the silence left behind. The audience, stunned, watched her go. The cameras lingered on Joy, her expression unreadable. Part triumph, part discomfort, part disbelief. Whoopi stepped forward, visibly strained. "We're going to take a break," she said carefully to the camera. "When we come back, we'll continue the show." The feed cut to commercial. But in the studio, chaos erupted. Producers swarmed the stage, whispering urgently into headsets. Audience members buzzed with shocked conversation, some applauding, others booing. Joy sank back into her chair, her face flushed but expressionless. The other hosts huddled together in low, frantic voices. And somewhere backstage, Anne Hathaway was gathering her things, her coat, her purse, her calm, preparing to leave the building after one of the most explosive moments in daytime television history. What had begun as a simple promotional interview had turned into something else entirely, a live collision between conviction and ego, activism and authenticity, pride and pain. Two strong-willed women had met in open confrontation, neither willing to back down, neither able to bridge the divide, and in that clash, they had exposed something larger than themselves, the deep cultural fault lines between idealism and cynicism, privilege and experience, performance and sincerity. It was raw. It was uncomfortable. It was undeniably real. And in the days, weeks, and months to come, millions would be asking the same question. Who was right? Or was the truth, as always, messier? That both were right and both were wrong, caught in a moment where understanding had collapsed completely. If you've made it this far, you've witnessed something rare in daytime television. Real conflict, real emotion, real stakes. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the fallout from this moment. And tell us in the comments, if you were in Anne Hathaway's place, would you have stayed and kept fighting, or walked off that stage just like she did?